name is David Willis and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I will be reviewing the Helios 44-2 lens. The Helios 44-2 is actually the first vintage lens that I ever bought. It's a 58mm f2 prime lens. This version of this lens was made in Russia from the 1950s to around the 60s as a copy of the German Carl Zeiss lens. You might think the 2 in the 44-2 referred to the maximum aperture of f2, but it really means that it's version 2 of the lens. The Helios 44, which didn't have a -1, was similar but had an M39 mount instead of an M42. There was also at least a 44-3, which added an anti-glare multi-coating layer, as well as an M44-4, but I have no idea what the upgrade was there. I couldn't find any information on that. Before World War II, the Soviet Union imported a lot of its optics from other countries. Unfortunately, most of those countries were Axis countries, and when Germany invaded Russia, the Soviet Union found itself in need of a new source of optics for their military. So they created, and I'm going to butcher this name, Krasnoyarsk Mechanical Works, or KMZ, in 1942 and started cranking out their own lenses. A couple of years later, the Soviet Army occupied East Germany, where the Zeiss factory was, and they stole the formula for the Zeiss Biotar lens. KMZ then began manufacturing their own copies of this lens, which became the Helios 44. The lens continued to be produced through the 1990s, undergoing several revisions along the way. There are also 50mm and 85mm Helios lenses, but you don't hear as much about those. The thing that makes this lens so popular is the swirly bokeh effect in the background, as shown in this sample image. The Helios 44-2 has an unusual configuration. The aperture ring is at the end of the lens instead of closest to the body like most lenses have. It also has an interesting double aperture ring. There's an outer ring that goes from f2 to f16 in one-stop increments, and an inner ring that operates smoothly with no clicks between f2 and whatever the outer ring is set to. This allows you to set your desired f-stop with the outer ring and then use the inner ring to temporarily change to f2 to make it easier to focus, and then to switch back to the desired aperture. The aperture itself consists of 8 blades. The focusing ring is nice and smooth and has a nice long throw. I would estimate it's about 310 degrees from the minimum focusing distance of 0.5 meters to infinity. The longer the throw, the easier it is to fine-tune the focus. The lens weighs just 7.7 ounces, which is about 218 grams, and it accepts an 49mm filter on the front. This is a manual focus lens, so it takes practice to focus well. However, with a focus ring that goes about 310 degrees, it's easier to tune than some lenses that only have about a quarter of a turn to the focus ring. Here's a focus chart that I use. I printed out 5 of these on the highest quality printer that Staples had and glued them to a piece of poster board and taped it to a movable wall in my studio. It's not pretty, but it also didn't cost hundreds of dollars. You may notice a bit of vignetting, but that's my lighting. I positioned one softbox above and to the left of my camera so that the corner is a bit brighter and the lower right corner is a bit darker. Note how blurry the corners are compared to the center. Here's the center of the chart at 200% zoom at f2. The focus is pretty sharp, as close as I could get it manually, and I don't see any chromatic aberration. Here's the center again at 200% zoom, but at f5.6. Again, this is pretty good, and contrast is a little bit better. Here's the upper left corner at f2. Notice how soft the focus is, and the ghosting around the dark areas. The contrast is pretty bad in the corners too. The whites are a bit darker and the blacks are a bit lighter. But if you're using this lens for the artistic effect of its bokeh at wide open, you probably don't care if the corners are out of focus as long as the subject in the center is. Here's the upper left corner at f5.6. Focus is much better than at f2. The whites are a bit whiter, matching the center image at the same f-stop, but the blacks are lighter. Here's the distortion test chart I use. It's a 2-foot by 3-foot dry erase vinyl mat with a 1-inch grid printed on it, designed for playing D&D or other role-playing games. You can get something like this at Amazon for about $25. The red lines were added in Photoshop and show what a true straight line would be. There's hardly any distortion at all with this lens. Here are some sample images to look at while I give some conclusions on this lens. This is a very nice lens. I would recommend getting one of these lenses if you are into shooting with manual focus vintage lenses. I would really like to try the 50mm and the 85mm and see if they're as good, but I'll have to see if I can find those on eBay. I've used this lens a number of times with models, and I really like the way that the background looks with this. It has a nice swirly effect. It's the trademark of this lens. But I've seen a couple other lenses that produced similar effects, and I'll mention those later when I get to reviewing those lenses. So that's the Helios 44-2. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you would like to see more of this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell icon so that you get notifications of new videos coming out. I will be coming out with videos about once a week with new lenses, or old lenses, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.